Do some freaky shit again, and I'ma get up out this chair, and I'ma bust your ass. You wanna rub your dick, bitch? You rub your dick when you get off the motherfucking train.
I wear Speedos. When I'm at the store, you know I'm wearing my Speedos. When I'm doing cardio, I'm wearing Speedos. It feels super breezy like I ride tornadoes. Swimming, swimming, swimming.
I'm sorry to be so stern with you, Barbara, but you do disappoint me. The way you slink about in a uniform 2 sizes too small, and no name tag.
It's bullshit. Absolutely crap. There's no such thing as white privilege. It's more like white getting screwed in the rear.
All right, welcome to Last Man on Earth. My name is Lex Jurgen. As always, I'm flanked by Matt Ralston. Matt remains one step ahead of the law in the police search for that masturbating man on the LA's Gold Line Metro. Eventually, Matt will be caught, handcuffed, and beaten by powerful men in mustaches, at which point he will masturbate even more furiously. Did you see that story in the news?
No, I didn't know there was a guy.
Oh, yeah, there was a guy. Well, here's the thing. There's always guys masturbating on Metro. But someone actually took a woman who he was masturbating to, took a video of him masturbating, and posted it online. To identify him. It's a very, very clear picture of him grabbing his junk and tugging himself, staring at her, and so they're trying to find the guy. But the only interesting part of the story was there was a reporter from ABC7, the local news station, who said who tried to frame this as oh my God, I can't believe this happened on the Metro. How could this be in Los Angeles? I'm like, have you ever been on the Metro before? Are you kidding me? This happens.
How could this happen in Los Angeles?
Yeah. I believe there were 17,000 reports of sexual harassment on the Metro last year, something like that. Some obscene number by women against men. It's just full of groping, masturbating men. I mean, that's just who rides the Metro routinely.
I saw a guy with a fishing pole with a dildo as a fishing lure, casting it and then dragging it along the ground in front of women as though they were fish, which I hate to admit I kind of laughed at.
That could be like a Steve O trick.
What is it with guys? Do they think no one's going to notice that they're masturbating, or do they just is that part of the thrill? Remember the security guard that was masturbating on the field at the Chargers game?
Yes.
There's 30,000 people there.
Yeah.
How are you going to get away with this?
Well, I guess he figured I'm a security guard. No one ever looks at security guards, which is kind of true. But now that every single person has a camera, you're kind of fucked. Because what used to be guess what I saw at the stadium, now becomes a fucking YouTube video or Facebook video.
Yeah.
So you're kind of screwed there. But my theory is on the Metro. I've repeated this before. At any given time of the day in the LA Metro system, there's at least one person holding a jar of their own urine, traveling around the city.
Yeah.
And they usually bust people holding, for some reason, containers of their own excrement. Seems to be a big thing as well. I think just people that have issues ride the Metro. For one, it's free, essentially free. You can jump on any subway without a ticket in Los Angeles.
I heard you can get busted though. But
yeah, but they haven't busted anybody, which is why the homeless are all down and riding the Metros back and forth. But you feel bad certainly for this guy's mother, because now it's there's your boy just tugging one out on the subway.
Is that even a preferable way to masturbate? I mean,
no. You're
looking at a fully clothed woman and you're jizzing in your pants
while she's filming you and telling you I'm going to turn you into the police. I guess some guys, it's a obsession for some guys. I guess why would Harvey Weinstein masturbate into plants in front of women? I don't know. Some guys have a screw loose.
That was creative.
I think some guys I never understood flashers. The guy who flashed their dicks at people and just get off and the people scream at them and throw shit at them and run away. And they get off on that. I never quite understood the allure of people throwing rotten fruit at your junk.
I had a roommate, and I knew the guy for a long time, and I thought he was a normal guy. And then a couple times he would he would go from the bathroom to his room
naked.
Yeah. And I go, okay, well, I don't know, maybe he forgot a towel. And I noticed he would do it every time my girlfriend was around. And so I go, look, we have a new rule. You just have to wear clothes inside the house now. And then it got to where I would come home with her and he'd be like, I'm naked. Like, he'd be pretending
Yes.
like he got caught.
Yes.
And I go, okay, you need to fucking move out, like, right now.
Like he just showered 17 times waiting for you to come home.
Yeah, and he was like a big fat bald guy, and it was he clearly got a thrill out of the humiliation or the of being caught in the act. And fuck, I thought he was normal, you know?
Yeah, I had naked roommate too for it lasted 2 days before I told him to just fucking turn it off. He'd actually walk around naked, like, and he's like, "What? It's just dudes here, just us dudes here." I'm like, "Yeah, yeah." Like, where the fuck did you grow up?
Right.
Like in the fucking Greco-Roman era? This is not. He's just a fucking hairy 20-year-old walking around naked. Like, dude, put some fucking. You don't need to get fully dressed in fucking tails and a coat. Just put some fucking shorts on.
It's just dudes here.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's just dudes here. Like, okay, fucking put your dick away.
if you're in a bathhouse,
Yes.
like maybe.
Yes.
I don't even think they're like. I don't even picture a bunch of like openly gay men like
No.
wanting like that Seinfeld episode. There's good naked and it's bad naked. He takes out the sander, the rotary saw.
Yes. This week's Last Man on Earth podcast is sponsored by Demi Lovato's People. They're outraged at her dealer who spiked her oxy with fentanyl. Where do you go to complain when your narcotics are laced with other narcotics? Demi Lovato's drug dealer. Shame on you. That's their story they're sticking with. That she was taking oxy and that her dealer laced her oxy with fentanyl. And that's why she had the overdose reaction. And like that's like, you know, like when you don't get your food cooked right at like at Marie Callender's and you have to send it back. Like, really, where can you go these days to complain about the fact your drug dealer is not in the up and up?
How do you lace a pill? I don't even understand. I mean, fentanyl is so powerful. I guess even like a powder, like a resin.
I don't know. Maybe she was she snorting it? Maybe she could have been snorting it.
But why? Yeah, I guess.
I don't know. I had one time I had marijuana in college. It was laced with amphetamines, and it was just crazy. I mean, crazy. And I'd never taken speed before. Smoked some weed, but I never smoked, and it was crazy. And I saw the guy again. I'm like, "What was that?" He goes, "Yeah, it was laced with amphetamine." I'm like, you know, that's something you need to mention when you sell the weed. Like, that's just not that's like sort of like the Hangover when he roofies everybody. That's something you need to mention up front to the buyer, I think.
Right. There's a lot about this Lovato story I don't think makes sense. I'm not still claiming she definitely faked it, but I'm trying to picture how you would lace a pill, and then when you're just buying pills, I mean, they're pills. Like,
yeah, well, or she might get it in powder. I think some people are doing it in powder form. The fentanyl that people are shooting up, right? They're using it like heroin. They're melting it and shooting it up.
Yeah, it's so powerful that it's to dilute it's more bang for your buck, but it'll kill you at a certain, fairly small dosage.
Pretty easy. Actually, I don't know if you saw this yesterday. It was really freaky. This was in New Haven, Connecticut. There was a park across from, just a public park right across from Yale University campus. And someone who sold weed there in the park laced it with, it was like that K2 weed, that whatever that synthetic weed is. And it had some chemical, like poisonous chemical in it. And he sold it to like 100 people. And they were all using it in the park. And they all had adverse reactions at like the same time. And there were 81 people who had to be hospitalized. Like people like spazzing around on the ground, like in fits and conniptions on the ground, like with seizures. Like 81 people at the same time in the middle of the park. It was crazy.
So parks are no place you should go.
No.
Every single person is taking essentially bath salts in this park.
Yes.
In every park across the country, by the way, I'm assuming.
But they had like 100 ambulances. They had like every EMT like within 100 miles was there, like trying to like calm try and hold these people down and get them tied up and into ambulances and shit at the same time. It was like the wackiest.
It's like a scene out of that movie where the virus comes
in. Like World War Z
Contact
or something. Contact or World War Z or something.
Dude, that's a really bad sign. Like,
yes.
I don't we don't need to get into the answers, but clearly, like, that's a very disturbing scene if you had witnessed it.
Yeah, I don't know who's taking like synthetic weed. I don't understand like what the allure. Other than it's really like you can get a hit for $2 or something. Seems like drugs, like maybe go up to the $4 range and don't die. Do your you got to panhandle a little better than that. Don't forget to become a patron of the show on patreon.com/Last Man on Earth. Thanks to all of our new patrons. Most of them in the Middle East, I believe. We're doing very well, like in the Emirates.
It's not a good sign.
No, I think you can be lashed to death for listening to this. So get on this ship before it disappears now. Patreon.com/Last Man on Earth. If you wish to contact the show, hit us up on Twitter at Last Man Podcast or on Facebook, also at Last Man Podcast. All right, on to the show. Matt, here's a topic we're going to start off with near and dear to your heart, which is men who wear super tight Speedos in public settings. I believe you've been warned many, many times. So, do you ever see, you live in West Hollywood, as is well known, the gay capital of the country. Do you ever see dudes like in Speedos just walking down the street?
Probably at the gay pride or at Halloween.
Oh,
they,
so no.
they have to have like somewhat of an excuse for it. You
Okay.
know, even if it's kind of.
So like short shorts okay, like mini shorts okay, but like a Speedo's not cool.
No, there is one really obese,
Of course.
I believe transsexual. I don't know. Essentially, a guy in a wig who wears lingerie and he rides a bicycle. And I saw him when I was just driving in traffic. I saw him having a cig at the bar on the patio. But that's just one guy. So
How very appealing.
But you can see his dick and balls.
Yes. So Chris Donahoe, I don't know if he's a friend of yours, a young gay gentleman, tried to go into the Wynn's Encore Beach Club in Las Vegas, one of those outdoor pool clubs, which I don't really quite understand. They look really cool, like in MTV shows and E-entertainment shows. But if you've ever been to one, they're really, really lame, and the drinks are wildly expensive if you can find one. And it's largely a large number of hairy Armenian men, like
It's pretty nasty.
in board shorts with massive shoulders.
And they're waiting in the pool, and
Yes.
there's so much sheen on the
Yes,
water because
yes.
of all the lotion and cologne, and it's just filthy. I mean, the amount of chlorine. I'm kind of allergic to chlorine, so I wouldn't get in that water anyway. But I mean,
It's like a toxic stew. It's generally about 110 degrees outside. There are usually relatively hot girls in bikinis dancing around, and everyone knows that only the bikini girls are allowed on the platform to dance because that's why 500 dudes in fucking shorts are sitting in the pool, in the dirty pool,
Yeah.
and paying $20 for a beer is because there's hot girls. I assume most of them are pros or ringer. A lot of them are ringers or pros who they're bringing just to tempt guys who come to the Wynn Club to go to the beach club. I don't know who goes to Vegas to go to the beach club. Like, as far as I'm concerned, if you go to Vegas not to gamble, there's something, or maybe to get a hooker, I guess. There's something wrong with you.
yeah, there's so much other stuff to do. I've had friends like, let's hit the pool. I'm like, no. I'm gonna watch a game or something. You know, it's not fun.
No.
You can tell it's not fun. There's a line. It's 180 degrees out because
Yeah.
those places are only open in the summer.
Yes, and it's super fucking hot. And I guess because we're from LA as well, you're just kind of spoiled where you can go to the pool any day of the year.
Yeah.
So if you're from frozen tundra, maybe that would appeal to you. But also, who wants to do shit at noon in Las Vegas? It's just not the right time. So this dude Chris Donahoe, who seemed clearly up for a genital fight at the Encore Beach Club, showed up in a brightly fluorescent banana hammock, barely containing his junk, and like an open kimono top of some kind. A gay gentleman, and I think was just waiting for security to say, "Dude, you cannot come with your fucking packaged like that and walk around here." And they threw him out. Of course, he recorded like the adventure for his blog and immediately called it homophobia, anti-gay stance of the Wynn Hotel. Is this, Matt? I feel like there probably is an anti-gay element to this to some extent, and the fact that he was swishing around in a bikini in a Speedo, it was clearly effeminate. If he'd been a straight guy, they might have been a little less abrupt with him. Mm-hmm. Just like a French dude, like who just got lost in his fucking Speedo.
Right.
But is that not the apt policy, and is not like crying homophobia like not appropriate in this situation?
Well, I don't know the policy. I think it was something about it, tasteful,
Yes.
kind of an ambiguous.
Yes.
It'll give us free reign to kick out.
Open-ended.
But then because I didn't follow the story nearly as closely as you did, you're oddly obsessed with it.
Well, yeah, I get my LGBTQ outrage letter.
But didn't they kind of like change the policy, or they weren't totally upfront about what the policy was?
It's intentionally vague because they said you can't. There's no nudity. There's no whatever else. But the other stuff is just tasteful. Like if you go to like any club, it'll say like tasteful attire required.
Yeah.
And that just means that they don't want you to argue with them when they tell you to leave.
It's pretty obvious too, like what it is. Like before you go in there, like what they're gonna have a problem with and what they're not. I mean, but I don't know. Like in terms of it being homophobic, which I agree it could be, but so I don't know if a woman walks in there and she has one of those weird porn star bikinis that barely covers your pussy and your whole asshole is hanging out.
Yes.
Like, I don't know if
I love the guy who designed. I love the guy who came up with that design. Like,
yeah.
Like, what are we going to build for porn stars to go to the pool?
Yeah, like, what is it?
What's the point of it even, really?
What is it for?
Yes.
I don't know.
It's not providing a lot of support.
Because I don't know if she, I'm sure they have at some point. There's a ton of weird whores in Vegas.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
they've probably kicked a woman out for something similar.
Well, if the prostitute came in and was like trying to like hook up with guys, they probably would kick her out. But obviously, women can wear thong. They can get away with a lot in their bikinis. But a dude, you got to admit, like a dude in a brightly colored banana hammock stands out pretty well.
Well,
at a pool party.
No, he did the full. He did his homework on that. Like his it's a size too small.
Yes.
So you can see his like pubes, and it's almost like the material is an inch away from his waist because his dick is there. So it's like, like
you can see he's shaved or whatever the fuck he does. It's like it's done to have people stare at his crotch.
Right.
It's not done as like this is to aid in my time in the 50 meter across the pool. I'm trying to set a record.
Right.
So this is everyone look at my dick. I'm going to get kicked out and then I'm going to cry homophobia, which again, I think part of it, the element is that if he was like a clearly heterosexual guy, they might have been a little more discreet about telling about the rules. But if you're swishing around as an effeminate guy with your fucking dick showing, then they're clearly going to jump you and kick you the fuck out.
Do you think so, though? Because isn't everyone petrified of exactly what happened at this point, which is he goes to the media and claims discrimination, whether or not it's true.
Yeah, but you're talking about dumbass security guys at a pool party,
right?
Who probably just went like, "Oh fuck, gay dude with his dick hanging out, get him the fuck out of here."
It's also the Wynn, which is owned by Steve Wynn, who's a hardcore Republican. He probably harbors some anti-gay views. I'm not saying he personally sets the policy, but.
I assume there's a lot of gay dudes in the pool. There's probably a lot of gay dudes in the pool just wearing regular
well, is the pool... I've never been to that one. I went to the one at the Hard Rock for about 10 minutes once, but outside of that, I haven't been. Is it 21 and over? Is it 18 and over?
That I don't know. There is liquor, so I'm assuming it's 21. It's 21 and over. The whole point is to sell you a cocktail that costs $20 to $25 and charge it to your room.
Well, if there's teenage girls there.
Wow, man! I check you out.
Or young children.
Yes. No, there's no children there. It's an adult only club, but it's not like going to the Abbey. It's a little bit different.
Well, it's real trashy. Like, let's be honest. It's a super trash vibe. There's a DJ. It's spring break for 30-year-olds.
Yeah, I think he was intentionally, and then the brightly colored fucking banana hammock. I think he was trying to get thrown out because, by the way, Matt. Chris Donahoe runs a consulting service that helps companies understand how to provide more inclusive environments to gay and lesbian individuals.
Oh, so he did this on purpose. I have no sympathy for him whatsoever. He's a fucking asshole.
Yes. As I've noted before, and people always get angry at me about, anytime someone's in like a racial or a homophobic incident on a plane or incident that's always on camera somehow it always goes back to the fact that they're activist bloggers.
Yeah.
That they're like, the normal people this doesn't happen to them, but somehow they create this incident. So if he had gone in like a regular swimsuit and was just swishing around and they kicked him out, for being swishy, then obviously you'd have a case. But if you're wearing like that and you're like clearly doing the strut back and forth, peacocking, that's just fucking time to go. I'd kick him out as well.
I mean, he knew what he was doing. He did his research, but I'm sure he fancies himself a real civil rights activist.
Yes.
I mean, MLK and those guys, Medgar Evers, SNCC, they did their research too. They knew exactly what buttons to push and what would get them arrested but not killed, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, although MLK didn't go across the bridge in Selma in a Speedo. Have you been to beaches in Europe before where guys are wearing Speedos routinely?
Yeah, my brother-in-law from Norway, and his dad wears a Speedo. He's about 65. He's got that Euro body. He's kind of like a tree trunk. But it makes me extremely uncomfortable.
It's just there's nothing right about that whatsoever. I don't understand the point. First of all, Norwegians aren't getting tan. They don't tan. So it's not like he's trying to get a tan. They're all pale as fuck. And second of all, it's not like you're trying to shave some time off your swim
Well, like a chick would like, oh, that guy's ass is so tan.
Yes.
I love it.
Or the package on that old guy, man. Like it's just
we do some things right, man. Board shorts are the right way to go.
Yes.
There's no arguing. It's not a cultural thing.
No, I don't think The Rock like would wear like a banana hammock. He seems to wear the shorts, whatever, and do fine with the ladies. It's just not really like a thing. I mean, for gay guys, I assume it's a thing because they want to show off their package in tight pants or in something like that. It just the idea of showing your dick is somehow, enticing to people.
Right.
Just like women show off their tits.
I bet Louis C.K. wears a Speedo.
Yeah, he probably does. One of my earliest memories is going to an all-male club with my father, and that he didn't want to go to, but he had to go to for some business deal. And it was all filled with old naked guys, and because you weren't allowed to wear a swimsuit in the pool, you had to be naked. It was men's only club, and just being like a 5-year-old kid around like just dozens of 70-year-old men naked. It just I don't know. Maybe I was gay and that just turned me back. I don't know what it was, but that was that was worse than seeing The Exorcist for me.
I don't know what happened with people that were born, around the mid 70s to 1980s and going forward. But when I'm in a locker room, I'm not cowering behind the locker room door, but the door of the locker. But I'll put a towel on.
Yes.
I just have a towel, and it just seems like the normal thing to do in the locker room. I never really understand the thing of just walking around.
It's usually old guys.
Yeah, it's guys over 50, over 60.
There was some because they literally had a rule like you weren't allowed to wear clothes. And these guys were like throwing the medicine ball around naked. Have you seen senior citizens throwing the medicine ball around naked? It's like, Jesus, what are you doing? Those old time weights where they pull over their shoulders.
They were doing it naked?
No, they actually had sometimes they had towels on. I believe I saw 2 guys throwing the medicine ball naked.
What?
And it wasn't. And the worst part is, it wasn't even a gay club. This was an ungay club. I'm like, do you realize how gay your ungay club is?
We could build missiles and tanks and but we couldn't figure out shorts.
Yes.
What is that?
I was just thinking at the time, and whenever back in the day, if some guy had been openly gay, they never would let him in the club. They were like, no way, we don't have gays here. All right, back to the naked medicine ball throwing guys. Come on, everyone take your clothes off into the pool.
Yeah.
By the way, pool freezing cold. So you got a bunch of naked guys in a freezing cold pool with a fucking packages shrunk up. All right, Matt, let's move on to a happier topic, racism. I have enough with the guy's package. Here's something I noticed, and I'm sure you noticed this too because you're very racially sensitive. Especially for one of the whitest guys I've ever met. So there's this new LA now if you haven't noticed, is inundated with a homeless sort of zombies, topless homeless zombies walking around building cardboard.
Yeah, it's Night of the Living Dead. Every day you see something weirder than the day before.
There are just people, and they're almost always, I would say, between 30 and 50, all white, excessively sunburnt, obviously. No shirt, never have a shirt on. They know enough. By the way, they know enough to wear shorts or pants.
Do not respect crosswalks.
Do not respect crosswalks.
It's like Frogger when you're driving down Sunset.
Every garbage can is open in town. They build their homes wherever, they build their homes on the highest traffic areas possible for some reason.
Yeah,
where everyone has to walk around them. And they seem to sleep very well.
And they're now hoarding also, which I kind of thought, I don't even hoard anything, and I have a fairly nice little condo. These guys are, they have full on Beverly Hillbilly lawns full of stolen materials.
They're built, and by the way, they all have at least 4 bicycles.
Yeah,
they are stealing bicycles. You cannot. I have a friend who had one of those kryptonite locks, and his bike still got stolen. I wonder how the guys who are zombies walking around still can manage to break into a pretty high tech lock. And if you go by down by the LA riverbed where a lot of the homeless are, there are just thousands and thousands of broken bikes, bike parts, bike things. Is there an underground market in bike parts I don't know about? Is that are you trading wheels and spokes and stuff for cigs and stuff? I don't know. It's
I don't know either.
It's the commodity of choice for the homeless.
It's getting to where I don't trust anyone who owns a bike.
No. Oh, the guys who are dressed normally riding around a bike in the middle of the day, through the strip malls doing circles.
Yeah. And the 30-year-old guy with always has the meth face, but he's riding the BMX bike.
Yes.
I'm okay, past the age of 17, you don't ride a BMX bike unless you're hardcore. into drugs.
And these are all, I would say, 99.9% white dudes, basically. It's complete demographic shift in the drug culture in Los Angeles, which was very noticeable because in the 80s and 90s, it was all, crack was a huge epidemic in the South Central, almost entirely in the black community. And the city and government responded by basically sending in tanks, armored vehicles,
Mass incarceration,
handcuffing everybody, arresting people first, asking questions later.
actually passing laws that stigmatized the drugs that black people were using.
The crack was like 10 times worse than cocaine for drug sentencing. Mandatory like 25-year sentences for being caught with crack.
Yeah.
Like doing all the movies that you saw in the 80s, every Miami, every like SWAT movie or DEA movie in the mid 80s, early 90s was about like big drug bust of black gang members pushing crack.
Yeah, and we still have huge police presence in black neighborhoods all across the country where,
yes.
It's and white people don't know this because they don't care. It's not uncommon for just a normal black guy with a job. He'll get pulled over by the police like 30 times a year.
Yes.
Just driving home.
Yes, and in L.A. in the South, well, we had to recall it South. They retitled it South Los Angeles.
Yeah,
but we still know it's South Central. The time NWA was writing songs, it was a war zone basically. It was the cops were basically in open war with like the young black men of the city. Guns on guns. They literally had tanks, like armored vehicles, going down the streets.
Enough so that when that movie Straight Outta Compton came out, the LAPD announced that they were having a higher police presence at movie theaters where it was showing.
Yes.
Like the cops don't get it.
You mean back when they had the riots, like when Boys in the Hood showed?
When the new one, like 2 years ago.
Because the police came out back in the day. It was the early 90s when Boys in the Hood came out, and they had like police riot gear at movie theaters.
Right. So this is and the point of those movies is that the police are brutalizing black people.
Yes.
So they don't get it, or they do get it, and they just don't give a shit.
There's a tinge of there's an element of truth to the violence, the gang drug violence, obviously, and then they make it worse. They make it way worse.
Yeah.
But now that it's all like these white guys on fentanyl and opioid addiction and whatever they're addicted to, roaming the streets, suddenly the city has become very sympathetic to drug addicts, stealing and loitering and everything else, and they're trying to help them. They just announced they're not going to arrest anybody for drugs anymore in the city because it's counterproductive to the system. It clogs up the system. In fact, they're going to erase all outstanding bench warrants for drug violations, essentially. Just wipe them out. The police head of the chief of police wants to wipe them all out from today, for everything back, so they can get rid of like 15,000 bench warrants.
That sounds like the opposite of any decision the chief of police has ever made.
Yes.
It's usually how do we get more people in jail and get people into the court system. That's their entire MO.
Is there any way to see this other, and they're building, now they're like, we got to build shelters for these people. They're going to build one down here where I live by the Whole Foods, like like a building, like a full-time permanent housing across from Whole Foods. Like, as if the homeless will go to Whole Foods. I can barely afford Whole Foods at that. Like to buy the $4 apples, they're going to be going in there. They're putting them in they're spending $3 million, I think, per place and stuff. And these are basically all drug addicts. They're essentially some are mentally ill, but they're all medicated. They're all medicated in some way. Young white males. So it's been a whole rather 180-degree take on the offense of drugs and theft and other things when it became white people. And as the two of the whitest people in the city, is this not an obvious tinge of heavy tinge of racism?
It seems like it. I guess I haven't checked the paper recently. I had no idea there was this huge comprehensive shift in like policy, because a lot of people now in LA, like homelessness is kind of a topic because they can see it and they don't like seeing it, Well,
now it's in the Valley and in West Hollywood and other places where, I mean, if you had a black drug addict walking around, the police would still swarm.
Right.
that would still cause a police reaction. But now that there's like young guys, young to middle-aged men walking around white, it's become how do we help these people?
Yeah, but I don't know. It feels like it's like I think all drugs should be legal, and I certainly don't believe in putting people into the court system because that's just stealing people's money, basically, is what that is. But this would seem to exacerbate the homeless problem. I mean, if there really are no consequences. I mean, obviously, what we need is mental health facilities, and that's it, really.
And drug stuff, and now they're saying they're going to let people get off on crimes if they go to the drug diversion, all this stuff. It just seems geared heavily towards the fact, the last 2 or 3 years of like this really sympathetic take on crime and drug crime and so forth, that it's almost entirely shifted to white people. Like I just don't, and I don't see racism in everything, but this one just seems so obvious that Eric Gart, the mayor, is suddenly announcing this is no longer crime. This is a health crisis. This is something that we need to be sympathetic about. It's the community's responsibility to do this. I've lived in LA long enough to remember when they were, every night in the news, they were fucking going into Compton and South LA, and there'd be like 17 people dead and 27 arrested, and they were busting up street guys playing stickball on the street and hassling them, all that shit. That doesn't seem to happen anymore.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I'm sure there is some racism involved, but I also think that the country's getting more progressive on that issue, on the issues of mental health and drugs. Even the Neanderthals, like, there's not that many Jeff Sessions type guys left.
No, but they're still arresting black people at an incredibly high rate for drugs.
Right. For possession. Yeah.
For crack and other things like that. I think it's the opioid crisis has heavily affected white America, and so now there's been a new take on drugs not being even probably by some Republicans, which is that drugs are not as evil as we thought. They're really addicts and they need help, versus like lock them in prison for 25 years.
Yeah,
seize their property and their cars, and make sure that there's a 50% unemployment rate among young black males.
Yeah, but I would almost think, because the people making the laws, they drive by it. Like, it's very visible. If you live in LA, it's impossible to miss. But like where I live, which is it's a good neighborhood for LA. It's not Brentwood, but it's a desirable area.
People couldn't afford to live there unless they had full-time jobs.
Right, and it's like I'll just be getting in my car and I'm like, look at how that guy's walking. I've never seen a person walk that way. and if you just kind of look around for a few minutes, it's like, oh my God, I'm like surrounded by fucking people that are so fucked up they can't walk, and God knows what they're doing with the rest of their time.
Yeah.
I mean,
I was at a coffee bean, and now that the coffee shops in LA have opened up themselves to homeless coming in to get water and ice and use the bathrooms and everything else like that, they become sort of meccas for that. And there were like 4 paying customers in there and 15 homeless people inside and outside, just hanging out like 12 noon, just like wasted, like not panhandling, just kind of wasted, topless. There was one woman, mostly men, one woman, a couple of people sleeping in cardboard things, just like talking to themselves and just like mumbling. It was like a Night of the Living Dead, like a Walking Dead episode, because these people are way too far gone for. These aren't going to be people who re-enter society in any meaningful way.
No, but aren't usually lawmakers, like, I would think the normal knee-jerk thing is to become reactionary. Yes. Like, we got to lock them all up. Yes. Get them off the streets.
That's where I think the racism thing comes into play. I think if there were like 10,000 black homeless drug addicts walking in the streets of West Hollywood and the Valley and the West Side, there would be a very different policy in play.
I definitely think you're right about that.
Can you imagine like black homeless addicts walking around like Brentwood? What would happen? So I was in Brentwood at a doctor's office, and I went to the parking lot, and there were just 6 homeless dudes walking around, peering into cars, looking in the cars to steal shit. That's just very common now everywhere you go. There's always guys peering into cars. I was like, I wonder what the interior of that car looks like. I'm a real fan of vinyl and leather.
Yeah, they're kind of infiltrating, and now you don't even know who's, a homeless druggie. Like, I was in the restaurant with my friend, and it's just like a normal barbecue restaurant, and this lady comes in. She's wearing like a weird trench coat. She looks like she could be homeless or just way too thin.
Yes, in LA it's hard to tell.
Hard to tell, model or homeless. Yes. I'm guessing maybe recently, definitely a drug problem, but still maybe not on the street. But I go outside to make a phone call, and I see her peering into a car, and I go, "Hey, is that your car? What are you doing?" And she says, "I'm just looking for my cigarettes."
Yes.
And I go,
Yeah.
Wait, what?
Yes.
Why don't you open your car and get them then?
Yeah.
Instead of looking through the window. And she like tries to shame me. She goes back in the restaurant, and now her and this guy she's with are like leering at me,
Yes.
like I shamed her in some way. But she is a paying customer in the restaurant. So it's a real gray area
Yes.
now to where like I just can't trust anyone in society. Like I don't want to set my phone down for 10 seconds. Someone's going to come swipe it while I'm looking the other direction.
All white people. Man, I'm glad we can expose racism today as the whitest people. I don't like to call it unless I see it very, very clearly. And and it's not even like evil. It's not like some sinister plot like where people are meeting at some country club, and plotting how to like hurt black people and help white people. I think it's just a subconscious, sympathetic
it's just
thing.
intrinsic racism.
Yeah, so just like those guys, that could be my son or my nephew or my brother,
Right.
and therefore I feel bad for them. By the way, they're white, so they're not violent. These are just guys who need help.
Right.
Meanwhile, by the way, there's a ton of violent incidents happening, mostly actually between the homeless people to each other, but they're all carrying some kind of weapon. So they all have some. It's like prison on the streets. They all have some kind of shank or something. And every now and then, one will get the bad drugs and fucking start lashing out at people. Matt, we got an email from Andy. Andy wants to know, have you ever seen Hollywood in such a lather, I love the word lather, over this idea to have a popular film of the year award at the Oscars? So I guess the Academy, such as it is, the Academy, voted this year to add, they changed a few things because the Oscars have been lowering in audience every year for the last 3 years. And last year was their lowest in like forever. So they're going to cut down the time. They're going to go to more sketch comedy interludes as opposed to speeches, which is probably a good idea because actually their sketch comedy sometimes are pretty funny. And their interlude speeches are certainly horrible. And they're going to add a popular film of the year award, which they haven't mentioned yet what it means actually, what the criteria are, but presumably they mean a film that everyone's actually seen during the year to be the popular film of the award, distinct from the Best Picture of the Year award, which will still be about somebody suffering from AIDS or the Holocaust or something like that, and having sex with an animal. But that's beautiful. That's beautiful.
This
by
is like
Spanish
football
director.
saying there's no more hard tackles. Like this goes against the entire premise of the Oscars, which is pretentious bullshit that no one cares about.
But have you? I mean, just to see the critics come out, the film critics especially come out, and some of the actors. I mean, like Rob Lowe, to have Rob Lowe come out and say this is the death of meaningful criticism, cinema, whatever. It's just such a pretentious. Everyone people watch it. I don't know why people watch the Oscars. You kind of have to. It's like watching Super Bowl, even though you don't watch football very much.
Yeah.
But it's like everyone knows that every year they put on this fake thing where they pretend that Hollywood is all about making art house films that are solid. I'm sure all these films are really good that get nominated for Best Picture, but they're very obscure. They don't appeal to a broad audience. They take on tough social issues sometimes. It's not what people want to pay their $10 to go to get escapism for. So they always have like $20 million in box office. No one's seen them, and they win the award. And there's always something about how come the best Marvel movie of the year, Star Wars, didn't win an award when like 85 times more people saw that movie. Doesn't this I kind of like this award.
I like that it's pissing some people off.
Yes, that's the best part by far.
I mean, it does kind of go against the whole point of the Oscars, but it always bothered me. I mean, first of all, there's no comedy category in the Oscars, which just shows that these people are humorless. Because comedy is one of the 4 or 5 genres of movies.
Never wins an award unless Meryl Streep's in it, then she gets something.
Why shouldn't there be just a comedy? What is there? There's drama.
Well, they do that in the Globes. They have drama, comedy, and musicals they put together, which doesn't make a lot of sense, but I guess it appeals to the same sort of crowd. But no, there is no category. They did they separated animation a few years ago, just so Disney could win some awards because they pay for the fucking Oscars every year. But they've never had like every year like Star Wars and the Marvel movies and all the top Transformers and all the ones that actually people see are never ever. Not only do they not win awards, they're not even represented at the show.
Yeah, well, I don't personally. I mean, I don't care about any of this, but I don't think that the superhero movies should be represented because they're usually almost never good movies in any sort of real criteria. Like
they're never great movies, but they're obviously people like them. They're entertaining movies. Some of them are pretty. Like the last Thor movie was it was certainly entertaining. Or like I just saw Mission Impossible. It was a fun movie, right? It was very well done for what it was. It wasn't trying to change the world or be meaningful or make a social statement. It's just a fun 2-hour movie.
Yeah, Mission Impossible is a good example of like a good movie that makes a lot of money. But there's also really good movies. You can still make a good movie and have it make money. Like I'm just trying to think, for example, like a Tarantino movie makes money.
Yeah.
Usually pretty good.
Yeah, Tarantino will get nominated.
Something like Ex Machina or smaller movies, but they're still good and people go see them. They catch on,
But they don't make a large amount of money like these other films do. They're not in the top like 20 box office for the year.
Yeah, that's what I don't know what they mean by, popular. I that's a pretty open-ended thing. And they don't know either.
No, they haven't said yet because they're still deciding like on the backlash over this. But obviously, like, it makes sense to actually have an award for film. I mean, so women watch the show to watch people's dresses and their gowns and like that because they haven't seen the movies. And men watch because they kind of have to. But, like, why would you want to watch a whole show honoring movies that you haven't seen? And, like, even if you go to the movies pretty regularly, that you haven't seen any of these movies.
Yeah.
I mean, they show, like, in L.A. and New York and San Francisco, and they don't really show anywhere else. They don't make money anywhere else. And granted, some of them are really good movies. But it's like, it's a niche. Those are niche films. And then they always talk. Then it allows Hollywood to talk about, like, it allows them to have Spanish directors stand up and talk about the art and the cinema and all this stuff like that when they're making all their money off Transformers and Thor and Captain America.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I don't know the reasons for this, but if you look at the Grammys, they're like, we'll just give awards to the most popular stuff, even though it sucks. Like Britney Spears will and Soldier Boy will win an award.
Yes,
or whatever.
And they're doing quite well, by the way.
But yeah, it would be like if they were like, and this album of the year goes to Father John Misty, and everyone's like, what? I don't know what's happening. I don't know who that is, and I don't know why there is that difference. But clearly, the Grammys, I don't know if they ever did, but they stopped pretending it was about art.
Yes.
So I don't care.
They'll still do the like African Rhythm Award or something like that, or the spoken word something or other.
Right.
But yeah, it's all for TV. It's entirely for TV and and they want to get a younger audience and they want to put on the hot stars. And why not have like Star Wars and Marvel and all the other shit represented at the movie? So at least like you can get some 10 million more people who actually saw the movies interested. Like,
yeah, I would watch that. And I would love seeing Daniel Day-Lewis and Meryl Streep frown in their expensive clothing and have to clap, but really be really sad about it. That would be the best Oscars of all time.
Would it just be Mark Wahlberg acting awards over and over again?
Yeah,
and everyone pretending that he's an actor. Oh yeah, hey, yeah, I did really well. Or like Stallone or Schwarzenegger just winning awards like at the Oscars.
Yeah,
that would piss people off so much.
Like The Rock goes up to accept his award in the
19th year in a
row.
row.
Character. Yeah.
Yes, 19th year in a row. The Rock wins. I saw Rampage, the movie Rampage, on an airplane recently. That's the one where the animals become huge and The Rock has to stop them. He's really good. I mean, it is the dumbest movie, but like he is so good at being The Rock.
Yeah.
The Rock is so good at being The Rock. It's like he deserves an award for that.
I agree.
He's just like he plays. You know exactly what he's going to do, but it's like almost like porn, right? You know exactly what the porn star is going to do every time. But if she's good, you'll keep watching.
He's awesome.
Yes.
That show Ballers is horrible.
Yes.
That show would have been canceled after 3 episodes, except for The Rock is on it.
Yes.
And The Rock says The Rock things, and you want to watch it.
Yes, he's unbelievably likable, and even though he's a complete cliche, you get the feeling he loves doing what he's doing. So it doesn't really matter.
Well, think about it in terms of, so he's the biggest action star in the world right now, and he will be for a while going forward. You had Schwarzenegger, born to a Nazi, can't talk. Stallone did like a porno.
Yes.
I don't know. I like Stallone, but I don't know. Kind of, he seemed dumb and
not a great actor.
Like he had brain damage or something. And then you got The Rock, who's like, his whole thing is he's a nice guy.
Yes, with big muscles.
Yeah.
Yes.
How do you not like The Rock?
I don't know. These guys are great. And by the way, now that cinema has become more and more international, where they count on the box office from overseas, from Asia especially, they don't need guys who are heavy in motors and method actors.
Right.
They need guys with huge muscles that are likable. That's what they need. Multi-ethnic that deliver funny lines, that do action stunts and deliver funny lines at the end. Yeah. Like there's a scene in Rampage when The Rock just gets shot, and then you think he's dead, but he gets up and he's like, didn't hit any vital organs and just keeps going on. Like, thank God I missed my vital organs. Just keeps going on as if nothing happened. He's got a huge wound like in his belly.
Yeah.
Like, but people, that's like only he could pull that off. There aren't like people understand like how's a rocket paid so much. He can pull that off. Whereas this would be, if this was like some other actor, it would be a really shitty movie.
Yeah, in that earthquake movie,
Yes.
what was it called? The earthquake movie?
San Andreas.
San Andreas. So he's like a EMT type guy.
Yes.
He hijacks a helicopter to go save his daughter, thus neglecting his job.
Yeah.
Probably, allowing many innocent people to die
Yes.
because he's selfish and wants to save his daughter. So then the whole world gets destroyed. And the last line is, someone asks, "What do we do now?" And he goes, "We rebuild."
Yes.
I'm like, what?
Yes.
You tested that?
Yes.
You could have had him do some wild takes.
Yeah.
Almost any other line would have worked.
Yep.
We rebuild.
Yeah.
And then the credits rolled.
Yeah. What did people say in the 80s?
And I was like, great movie.
I'll be back. Hasta la vista, baby.
Right.
Like, that sold billions and billions of T-shirts and fucking everything else. You don't underestimate how dumb people are.
We
and I like them
rebuild.
too. It's wrestling. Yeah, it's wrestling. It's just his movies are just professional wrestling.
Yeah.
Which is why it's amazing. Matt, I'm going to call this an opinion piece by you. You have a weird anti-fetish, which is, I guess I don't know personally, but I'm sure there are a lot of men, based on the YouPorn search topics, who like naughty nurses,
Yeah.
who find nurses really hot. That seems to be a hot Halloween uniform, Halloween costume for girls trying to show off, and it seems to be in a lot of porn, and it seems to be like sort of like the femme fatale thing of the hot nurse. But you, on the other hand, happen to find nurses disgusting to the point that you wrote a piece, an essay on mattralston.net about how disgusting nurses are.
Yeah.
Where does this come from? Were you abused by a nurse at some point in your life?
No, I haven't spent any time in hospitals. I've visited friends a few times. And the nurses they're either all business or mean.
Yes.
But they're never like nurturing or friendly by any means.
Okay.
And I get why they're overworked. But so I go on like a Tinder, and every other chick is a nurse, and I'm just like, no, I don't want to date a nurse because they have to all have PTSD. They're dressing wounds, and they're looking at internal organs seeping out of people's bodies all day. They're sticking their hands up people's asses. I mean, I don't even want to know what they're doing.
Yeah,
but
I feel like
it's
you don't
all-
know what nurses actually do.
No, that's true. It's apparently pretty obvious. It's
I've never had a nurse
unsavory.
doctors stick their hands up their asses.
Well, I had a friend who was dating a nurse, and she had this very sterilized smell.
Yes. Yeah, that's true.
Because
The
once you
antiseptic
get out of that hospital, I
Yes.
would think you scrub yourself down
Yes.
as thoroughly as possible.
Just like the girls who work at Hooters who smell like fried chicken.
Yeah.
Yes, it's the
Yeah.
opposite. But quite the opposite.
Although that's kind of hot, though.
Really, the old oil smell.
Well, there's pheromones are a big thing in relationships. People. It sounds gross, but guys talk about the smell of a woman. I'm like,
Yes.
ugh. But it's true.
Yeah, subconscious a lot.
Yeah. People are attracted, but when you smell like, you just had to dip yourself in sanitizer
Yes.
after your job, which was spent mopping up blood and diarrhea.
Formaldehyde is not an enticing smell.
No, it's not. And I also just think, unless you're a psychopath who has no empathy, or if it's distance yourself so much from like the human condition, when you're just looking at blood and death all day,
Yes.
don't you bring some of that home with you? I don't. The most of the nurses I've met are not really funny.
No, that's true.
happy-go-lucky
No,
people.
they're not. One of my favorite shows because of that was Nurse Jackie on Showtime. Because she's like such the tough. She is like nurse you're describing, but she ends up with a huge opioid addiction, Percocet addiction, because she just can't. I mean, just like you have to like she internalizes everything. And at the end of the day, she just needs to get like fucking drugged out of her mind because she can't handle the stress of that whole thing, because it's just like what she goes through in a given day is so horrific that she can handle it like as a tough woman the entire day. But at the end of the day, the only way to cope with it is just to fucking drug herself out of her mind.
That's interesting. I mean, I know they do have a pretty high suicide rate, and
doctors also have doctors as well have a high drug addiction rate.
Yeah, and it just seems. I mean, I'm sure there's some that want to help people, but fuck, I wouldn't want to help people after a while. I'd just be like, why don't you just like kill yourself?
Is it possible you're just transferring yourself into the role of the nurse and you think it's horrible? I agree that I don't think most people take the nursing job certainly anymore because they have a sense of giving back to the community or a nursing instinct. They take it because an RN job's pretty sweet with your benefits and your pensions and everything else.
Yeah.
I mean, for a woman of coming from no means, you can make yourself $75,000 a year with nice benefits and a union job essentially. And I think that's why people especially foreign nationals, you see a lot of Filipinos, other people like that, train specifically for those jobs.
Yeah.
Because it's a great industry to be in. First of all, it's always hiring. And second of all, the jobs are always there, and I don't think you can possibly get fired. You would have to commit some horrible criminal act before they would fire you. We're in such desperate need of nurses that, your job security is infinite. So I think it's more of I feel the same way about teaching these days. A lot of people go into teaching that aren't really moved by teaching children, but it's a nice profession to be in especially for a lady as a second income. Because it has a lot of perks that go along with it, and it's guaranteed.
Yeah, but I'm looking at it as someone who hasn't come from a war-torn country. But why would you not rather teach ninth graders how to read a novel
the new nursing
than deal with abscess wounds and homeless people whose feet have fallen off on the railroad tracks?
I think a lot of it is I spend some time in hospitals and medical centers. And I think a lot of it is foreign. It is heavily foreign. So I think those people probably couldn't necessarily get into teaching quite as easily because their English is not tremendous.
Yeah.
So I remember when my wife gave birth to one of our kids, I can't remember, there were 8 nurses in the room, and not a single one of them was Native American, was from the United States.
Right.
So there was a Jamaican, there was a girl from the Philippines, there was a girl from West Africa. There was it was like Benetton commercial, and none of them particularly spoke English particularly well. So I think that's one reason as well. But so you don't do nurse porn, huh? That's not your thing? Hot nurse at Halloween? You just go ill?
No, I don't care. I mean, if you want to wear a nurse hat, I know that you're not a real nurse.
Yes.
But no, I wouldn't seek it out.
Because it says nurse on your hat. That means you're real.
Definitely wouldn't seek it out.
It is what hot girls seem to like to dress like naughty nurses. That seems to be one of the popular lingerie costumes that women wear every year.
I think it goes back to the World War I and II,
yes.
Back when people volunteered stateside, and the
yes.
war hero did have the hot nurse who was trying to get in his pants or whatever.
Because it was all young women, essentially. All young women, like college-age women, were nurses back then.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of hot women. So it was like, what was that movie? The Michael Bay movie, the attack on Hawaii.
Pearl Harbor?
Was it called Pearl Harbor, the movie? But infamously, he made all the nurses lose a lot of weight. All the actresses lose a lot of weight to be nurses. So Kate Beckinsale, who's a super hot British woman, had to lose 15 pounds because he thought she was too heavy to be a nurse. And she was already kind of slender, but he made her be real thin because he wanted hot nurses in the movie. And I assume in Hawaii they probably had hot nurses in the 40s. A lot of GIs seem to marry those nurses. But yes, it's if you go to a hospital in a major city these days, it's not the same.
No,
very few models in the outfit. They don't even wear the white nurses outfits anymore.
Well, if you're hot, you figure out how to not dress wounds.
Yes.
Basically, I mean, I don't think anyone enjoys that.
Well, you know what those nurses do? They work in private practice with plastic surgeons and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They work in offices with specialists, so they're not in the hospital. They're doing mostly paperwork, and they're doing work for hot doctors who they like to marry. My friend, who was a surgeon, always tells a story about when he didn't realize he didn't come from any medical family or background. He just became a doctor, and he didn't realize how sort of conniving the nurses were about marrying doctors. And then he peeked in on this meeting of a nurses meeting, like a luncheon or whatever they're having, and all the nurses were talking about was how to hook a doctor.
Wow.
And how to when to get the engagement ring from the doctor and make sure it wasn't on a birthday or Christmas. Or make sure it was on birthday or Christmas, because then it's a gift.
That could be, yeah.
And he was and it was blew his mind. He was 28 or 29 at the time. Blew his mind that actually there were secret meetings of nurses talking about how to hook up with rich doctors, hook up the rich doctors.
That's not surprising.
Yeah, it was almost like gold digging a basketball wives or something like that. But it was nurses on break just talking about how to get up with the rich doctors.
And nurses also seem to get into this whole medical, like they start towing the line. Like I feel like you could say to most nurses, like, my blood pressure is like 5 points over, and they'd be like, well, you need to get on this medication immediately.
Yes.
Before being like, what are you eating?
Yes.
Have you ever walked?
Yes.
Like they just get really into the whole culture of sickness, basically.
Well,
like,
I think if you find a nurse who's been around for like 20, 30 years, they definitely know more than a lot of the doctors do. Because doctors just aren't. It's all capitated service, so they have like 2 minutes to spend with you.
Yeah.
So nurses actually probably know a little bit more than doctors in terms of the basic stuff. They're not going to cut into you, but in terms of basic stuff, they probably know. Like they're the ones who would know like when opioids are being overprescribed, where the doctors don't give a shit. They don't have hot pharmaceutical reps coming to their office to try and seduce them into pushing drugs on their patients and stuff.
Well, that's even worse because you're dating a nurse, and every dinner conversation is about how fucked up the healthcare industry is.
Yeah,
and you're like, yeah, it is fucked up.
You got me going, man. I'm not gonna see any nurse porn anymore. By the way, those exam rooms never look like real medical offices. It seemed to be that was a school room earlier.
Yeah, it's always the same poster,
Yes.
the general anatomy poster.
Yeah, and the desk and the wooden desk that's used in the schoolroom and also the office.
Yeah.
Same thing. Matt, let me ask you. I know you cheered. I think it was a couple nights ago. You cheered when the first transgendered man who's a woman. I never know the terms. Became the Democratic nominee for Vermont governor, which I assume means become Vermont governor because I assume they only vote Democrat in Vermont. That's the only way to explain Bernie Sanders. Susie wants to know, is it really a grand accomplishment that a dude who wants to be a woman might be governor of Vermont? And by the way, isn't he or she more masculine than Bernie Sanders either way?
That is a very masculine woman. That is
like worse than Bruce Jenner.
Yeah, that's not, oh, that's a woman. That's a transgendered woman.
Yes. And by the way, she picked, so her name is Christine, or lady name is Christine Hallquist. I kind of respect not going with like Sahara or Savannah or something like Desiree, because a lot of the trannies seem to go with like the very exotic female names when they change over. But the Christine is just too unisex. It's like too unisex.
Was her name Chris?
I'm
before?
guessing it was Chris before, and then he went with Christine. That's like just seems like boring. That's like just speaks to how like uninteresting of a new woman you are when you go with Christine, because Christine is like Pat from the SNL skit. Christine is that Chris is that whole thing of like, is it a man or is it a woman?
Right.
But there seemed to be like a huge hullabaloo of like, this is a big moment in American history. When I guess first of all, it's Vermont, but I guess it kind of is. But it's a dude. It looks like a dude with glasses and a wig, and didn't really have much to say about anything.
Yeah, I don't know her politics. I know that. So I think the previous governor was a Republican, or maybe he's a Democrat. Either way, he fucked up by going against gun rights.
Yes, they love guns in Vermont.
Guns huge in Vermont,
yes.
Although no murders, so I don't know how that works.
Well, it's a big hunting. It is a big hunting state, and it goes back. I mean, it has the roots back in the hunting stuff. So
Right.
New England, you got to have your guns. Even if you're like the most liberal state in the country, you still have your guns.
Right.
But I don't think they have AK. Cool. I don't think they have AKs there.
No, they're pretty reasonable people.
Yes.
But yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't know how necessary it was. It's obviously a statement. Someone decided like we should nominate this transgendered person. Not saying it's right, but I'm sure it'll piss off a lot of Republicans and could conceivably hurt Democrats in the they're really rubbing it in our faces with this.
That's what I think. I don't know the politics of it all. In Vermont, it doesn't really matter because I assume she is going to win, and nobody really cares what the governor of Vermont does. Actually, the current governor of Vermont, I think it was, or somebody in Vermont, one of the leaders, announced they were making, because of the Trump tariff deals, they were making a separate deal with Quebec in Canada because they're going to have a separate trade deal with Quebec. Which, of course, you can't do. So, like Vermont and Quebec can get together and form their own international trade deals.
It's like two states pretending that they're their own countries,
yes.
Which they like to do,
yes.
But it's in reality not the case.
No, I still don't know how Canada didn't let Quebec go when they tried to go.
I wish they would have.
I mean, that seemed like if you're on the western side of Canada, Quebec must be the most annoying fucking people in the entire world. First of all, just speaking French all the time is really annoying. but the way they see themselves as being better than the rest of Canada must be super fucking annoying to Canadians.
Oh, there's a real attitude problem that
Yes.
those people harbor.
Yes.
A real superiority complex. Not sure why. They're basically French rednecks.
Yes.
But yeah, it's weird. Like you go to hold the door open for one of them, they like laugh in your face. I'm like, well, but you can't tell because they look the same. I mean,
Yes.
they might wear weird shoes.
And that forces everybody in Canada to speak 2 languages. Like everyone, like Trudeau has to give every speech in 2 languages, as if French is like that, as if the people don't speak English. Like they all speak English.
Trudeau's one of those. He's one of those elitists. Though.
Yes. You have to learn English and French.
Well, a woman asked him at a town hall, I feel alienated as a English-speaking Canadian because I don't speak French. And then he answered her question in French.
It's so
It's a
annoying.
real dickhead move.
It's not even like a pattern. Like Mayor Garcetti of LA will give he'll always say something in Spanish at the end of his speech. And he always announced, now I'm going to speak to the Spanish-speaking residents of our city, and because he can speak Spanish.
Right.
That's his thing. And he just proceeds to say the same thing over and over again. He's never saying anything important. And by the way, most everyone can understand what he's saying in English because he's not giving like a complicated math lecture. He's saying, we'll do our best to whatever. But in Canada, every official has to give everything in English and in French. Everything has to be written in English and French. Every door sign has to be in 2 languages. I would just fucking kick those. And by the way, I'm mostly angry because I went to Montreal one time, and the women were all saucy arrogant French women. It was so fucking annoying. I'm like, I just left New York. You're really close to New York, and you're speaking French, and you're like tardy and saucy and annoying.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, how many people, not counting the countries they colonized, but I mean, how many people at this point actually speak French? How many people live in France? Like 10 million?
It's more than that, but they've lost all their colonies. So there's still some African nations where they speak French.
I feel like it's verging on a dick move to speak French at this point.
I had a roommate once who I thought was French. I thought he was Italian, French. His family, everyone he spoke to his family on the phone was always in French. And it turned out they were all Egyptian. Who knew? I don't know. They're swarthy. They were just swarthy people with a lot of
Sounds
gold.
like a terrorist.
They were like swarthy, like hairy people with a lot of gold. I assumed they were Italian. And he was from Long Island. I assumed they were Italian. And they all spoke French for some reason. And then I finally met his whole family came, and they were all Egyptians because they still speak French in Egypt. That's their primary non-Arabic language.
I did not know that.
Yeah, but I agree. French used to be the cool thing. But back to a tranny lady.
Oh, right.
You can't say tranny anymore on Twitter, by the way. You get kicked off now. That's another word they excluded, which I guess is sort of okay. I like that Alex Jones got kicked off for a week on Twitter. So, like, do people not understand that, like, that makes these idiots stronger? Like, is that, like, they don't understand how these people make money, I don't think. But it's by getting kicked off of social platforms.
Yeah.
That's how they get. That's how they get another $1 million or $2 million for themselves. Fucking idiot.
And make sure when you do that, I'll kick him off everything at the same time, so it looks really obvious that you conspired against him.
Yes,
which you certainly did.
Yes, and then allow him to do a fundraiser to get back on the platform. I think he's raised several $1 million, which I assume he just keeps for himself. I mean, he must be so happy the day they kick him off.
Yeah,
like it's fucking utterly ridiculous.
I'd be happy to get kicked off. I wouldn't even make any money. It'd just be a good day for me.
No, you could just quit. So, what do you think? So, tranny is a big thing or not a big thing? I'm looking at the pictures of Christine Hallquist right now. And yeah, boy, it looks like the girl did not get invited to the prom. Is that home at the prom night, or a women's basketball coach like Pat, a little bit like Pat, whatever her name was, basketball
Summit.
coach. Yeah, a little bit like Pat Summit's older, bigger sister.
Yeah, I mean, I'm cool with it. Obviously, I don't know what the governor. I think once she's elected, if she's elected, I don't think we'll ever hear anything about the governor of Vermont again.
No, except they'll cover her on every speech she gives just because she's transgendered. I don't see. It's still people don't understand that transgender still is one in 3,300 people are transgender in this country. It's still 1/3 of 1% of the population. It's minute. It's not like the gay population or the black population like that. Transgender is a very small population that has a extensive amount of media coverage. Just a massive amount of media coverage.
And now they're overrepresented in politics. Just based on this one governor.
And now they're claiming you can't have characters, non-transgender actors playing transgender characters in movies. You can only use transgender actors. And by the way, I assume in Hollywood there's a lot more transgender people than in Nebraska. But still, it's still a pretty low percentage.
Well, that's why this thing, I think it's kind of cool, I guess, but it is Vermont. Like, it's a very Vermont. It's the most Vermont thing to happen, you know.
Yeah. Well, Bernie Sanders for 35 years, as an independent whatever he did. You know.
Yeah, I'd just be more impressed if she was in Gainesville and
Yes.
then won the governorship of Florida or something.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. Well, they've had a lot of gay governors, closeted gay governors, but I don't think any openly transgender person is going to win. Although it would be awesome. The best thing would be like a crying game thing, where somebody like won like a Republican thing. That's like a really masculine dude, and then came a hot woman, and then revealed himself to have a dick.
That'd be awesome.
That would be like an amazing crying game moment when they gets elevated to some like big convention speech and just whips out his package, lifts her dress, whips out her package.
That'd be so great.
Yeah, that's never going to happen. I assume they do a ball check on that, that thing. Matt, is there anything? You're what, 6'2"?
6'4".
Oh, 6'4". Yeah, I just assumed you were 6'2". So I recently traveled on took 2 flights on airline. One was on American, where I'm 5'9", and I couldn't move my legs for 4 hours because the seats were so tight in coach. And it was really, I don't complain a lot. I'm not tall, so I don't like to complain about like how the seats are too tight, because I feel like people look at me like, you're not tall, shut the fuck up. But it was like it was horrible for me. I assume it's even worse for you. So I flew recently on Alaska, and I said, is there any seats with more leg room? I've had blood clots before from my legs. And I'm supposed to get up and like walk around the plane. Everyone should actually, really, because having your knees bent for like hours is really bad for your blood system. But they said, yeah, you got to pay. And there's just a short flight from LA to San Francisco. You got to pay $15 to get the extra leg room. And I'm like, well, I mean, yes, I can afford the $15, but like, are you telling me I got to pay more so I can actually have some blood flow in my legs? Is this like extortion? Like, it's not like they used to sell like, go to business class, get free cocktails, you get better movies, you get the hotter stewardesses. I get that, but this is just like leg cramp extortion.
Yeah, it's when they started doing the premium seats, and they're just regular coach seats.
Yes.
And charging more for the exit rows and really nickel and diming. Not coincidentally, because they're now a monopoly. There's basically going to be 2 airline companies, and they engage in price fixing, which it's not a conspiracy. It's a fact that was brought out, and no one cares. Because, they can do whatever the fuck they want, obviously, and it's obvious that they have no respect for their customers.
No.
Hence the seats. I have figured out a way to at least recuperate my money from them.
Yes. This should be interesting.
Yeah, a friend told me about this. And so what you do is you get one of those prepaid ghetto-ass credit cards.
Yes.
So you get one, say it's got $50 on it. Spin that, so it's got about $1 left on it. Could be 2 cents, whatever. No money, basically.
Yes.
So when you're flying, they run those. All they can do is authorize that it is a credit card.
Oh, they don't know how much is on it.
No,
Yes.
they don't know how much is on it. So I get about 3, 4, 5 drinks and a couple snack boxes every flight, and that makes me feel better.
Is this your falling down moment? This is like your stick it to the man moment?
Yeah, exactly.
They're like, where's that guy? They're gonna find airline security is gonna be tracking you down. Where's that guy who buys the fucking moon pies, and ginger ales, and fucking scotches, like, and isn't paying for them on his flights? That's got to cost him at least what, $20 a year?
Oh no,
wholesale.
Dude. I'm chipping away at this industry. We're talking probably in the $300 to $400
Really?
range last year.
Wow.
A lot of flights, a lot of drinks. But you have to be drunk to fly at this point.
You do, but then you have to go to the bathroom. Who can go to the bathroom? Because you're locked. If you're like not in the aisle seat, you're locked in, man. You gotta everyone has to get out. You gotta climb over people.
I definitely do aisle, but it's
Yeah.
worse now because the seats are smaller. They're
Yes.
and narrower, but you're there's less leg room, so you're more folded into the chair. So
Yes.
people are knocking you in the head, when they walk by. Like I was.
If you're in the aisle seat, you get smashed by everything.
You get smashed, dude. I took a flight back from Alaska to Seattle a few weeks ago, and I don't know, it was a midnight flight, and I don't know if it's just Alaska people drinking a lot or whatever, but I've never seen more people come to and from a bathroom in my
Yes.
entire life. It was like a constant flow. Like I couldn't relax. I had like terrible anxiety because there was just no... It was like a free-for-all frenzy in the fucking aisle of people going to the bathroom.
I assume they're just drinking. That's the problem. You drink is great, but then you have to go. It's like at the ball game too. I hate that because guys drinking beer, fine, whatever. I don't care. Let's drink the beer. If you can afford $14 a beer, all the power to you. But then they got to go fucking take a leak every other inning, and you got to stand up in the whole aisle and excuse me, I got to go to the bathroom.
But when I booked that seat, I usually book towards the front because I like getting off earlier. I don't know. I still don't know why it takes so fucking long to get off the goddamn plane. But this was towards the back, and so I was like, oh, that's why I don't do that. But they're trying to charge me more
to go front,
to sit in the front. And I'm like, fuck you. I'm not paying you for a normal seat.
Yes.
You know,
the same. It's the prices are pretty good, but then they add everything on. A lot of airlines now charge for if you want carry-on bags. Well, shit. There is that one like with American. I think it was Group G or whatever the fuck they gave it some inconspicuous name, but you're not allowed to carry anything on at all. And you have to sit in the back 3 rows. And it's just like it's the class like on the Titanic that get all drowned. It's like the steerage class, and there's like a gate, so you can't get out of the gate.
I haven't seen
like the
that
lowest.
yet.
Yeah, it's the lowest. United is doing it as well. Like you have to sit in the back 3 rows, and you can't bring anything other than like a purse or an over-the-shoulder bag on with you. It has to go under the seat. You're not allowed to put anything in the overhead compartment, and you have to sit in the back next to the toilet, which is on a long flight. It's not very pleasant. Not very pleasant.
That's brutal. I didn't even know about that, but it sounds right.
It's basically become like Greyhound, but at least on Greyhound in the bus you can stretch your legs a little bit. They don't kill you on the leg room. So I just don't like how boldly transparent they are about like if you want to be able to feel your legs halfway through this flight, give us $15 or $20. And what else do you get? That's it. That's what you get.
It's insane. And now they're trying to fill their extra seats. Like I was booking a ticket the other day, and it's like flexible dates.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what kind of fucking loser is like, sure, just put me on a plane.
Yes.
The worst flight you have,
Yes.
the worst seat. Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just come back whenever. Yeah, I got nothing going on.
Tuesday, 8 hours. Be here. You got to save $10.
And you can't get them on the phone. You talk to them. They're in the Philippines. They really like. This is a thing that I've seen change, which is why I believe in regulation to a sensible degree. I've seen it change. Flying has always sucked, but it used to be not terrible.
Yeah,
you
worse now.
get a seat, and the people were nice, and they would try and help you out if they could. And now they're like, fuck you. Get in the seat. Don't say anything.
It's an assembly. It's a complete assembly line. Move the bovine type situation.
Yeah.
And they're always like trying to get on time, and they're like shoving people around. It's become like a Japanese subway. It's like a Japanese subway where they shove the person with the batons.
Yeah.
And it's not that. It's still not that cheap. I don't understand. I mean, you can get good deals. Alaska was offering like really cheap deals. But you got to buy by midnight on certain dates. And it's always, by the way, you have to fly at 6 a.m.
Yeah.
You have to take the 6 a.m. flight. Otherwise, if you go 7 a.m., it's five times as much money.
That's why people are freaking out on the plane all the time. People are running down the aisles in hysterics. It's like, I get it. You push an animal to its breaking point,
yes,
and it's going to react.
And that's why people are literally bringing other animals to bring the therapy on the airplane. I used to like travel by airplane. I just dread it now. And the airports and the TSA, which, by the way, you saw the story, obviously, the guy who took the Horizon airplane at Seattle and did all the barrel
Dude, I
rolls.
found that oddly hilarious.
I was like my favorite story of like
the transcript of him talking to the
Yes.
guy. He's making fun of the guy.
Yes.
He's like, okay, Mr. Pilot guy,
Yeah.
you're
Yes.
really smart.
Yes.
Then he does a barrel roll. I
Yes.
was watching the footage.
Yeah.
I'm like, he did learn this from video games. He does a barrel roll,
Yeah.
and then he does a full flip,
Yes.
barely missing the ocean.
Yes.
Like, dude, if you're going to go out, thankfully he didn't hurt anyone, and
No.
I don't think he was trying to hurt anyone.
No.
That guy's a fucking boss, in my opinion.
He was the calmest suicidal person ever. He's just like, I might do one more thing before I die.
Yeah.
Like, I'm gonna do this fucking thing. And by the way, they didn't think the plane could withstand what he was doing, which was kind of awesome.
He made huge strides for aviation
Yes.
during his suicide.
Yes. And he clipped the island. He got a
The
little too close.
flip? The
Yeah,
flip
that was
was
amazing.
incredible.
That was amazing. I've never seen an airliner do that, like a commercial jet do that before.
Yeah.
I'm sure they do that in testing in the middle of the desert somewhere, but like I've never seen an actual. And then, by the way, a guy with no, it's just a baggage. I was thinking because I just saw the Alaskan baggage handlers on the ground, and the guy was vaping. It was like he put the bags on because like that's what the guy did. He put the bags on the plane, and what a fucking horrendous job that is. And he's just like, fuck it, I'm just gonna jump on this plane and just do it.
Yeah, I think that guy had a real sense of humor. I looked at his Instagram and his Facebook, and his wife was hot.
Yes.
And he was like traveling and like looking real cool and ironic in his photos.
Yeah.
And then he did one more cool thing before he,
and he was like, and everybody, I mean, this is very cliche, but everyone who knew him said he had no signs of like being angry or suicidal or venting. He was like quiet, but like never said a bad word at work. He was just like kind of a happy-go-lucky guy, basically kind of quiet. But like that's always cliche. They always say about terrorists and stuff. But it was like literally. I mean, his wife didn't think anyone was wrong. It's like there's always warning signs. This guy just like saw the plane. He's like, fuck it. Like, this is it. And he didn't know how to land. So he knew he wasn't coming back.
Is that what he crashed eventually?
Yeah, he doesn't know how to land a plane. That's why I had the pilot on with him to try and help him land, because apparently it's pretty easy to take off, but it's really hard to land.
He should have done a water landing.
Well, he did a landing into an island. It didn't work, but he knew he wasn't coming back.
Right.
Which is pretty amazing, and he was so calm. I love that guy. That was a big fuck you to the airline, because by the way, he trashed one of their planes. Fuck you, and you're stealing your like fucking B&Bs and all your drinks and stuff like that, man. He fucking like took it out an entire Horizon. That's a Horizon plane operated by Alaska Airlines plane.
I'm going to get on a list now, both of us.
All right, Matt, now comes the time of the show when I get everyone over to patreon.com/lastmanearth to hear our Pennies at a Bunch extra special exclusive segment for today. If you're not on patreon.com, where the fuck are you? All right, that's Last Man on Earth. Talk to you next week.